WLRN Video presents.
Welcome, WLRN listeners. This is Emiliann Lorenzen, and I interviewed Ava Park about fairy tales, mythology, and spirituality. She shares her views on patriarchy and matriarchies, and how women need to reclaim their sacred history and write their own creation stories. She gives an in-depth analysis of the 4 phases of womanhood: Maiden, Mother, Queen, and Wise Woman, along with her course, The Queen Teachings with Ava. Enjoy this enlightening conversation with a true queen.
So I'm Emiliann Lorenzen with the WLRN, and I'm here with Ava Park. We met at Sovereign Women Speak, and I really enjoyed meeting you and wanted to have a conversation with you about kind of your work in feminist activism and even kind of the spiritual side of what you do, the goddess temple, right? Yeah, the goddess temple and the Museum of Woman, and your course, The Queen Teachings with Ava. I still have your brochure from the event.
That's great. That's great.
So if you like, you can maybe just briefly introduce yourself for the listeners.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. I'm Ava Park. I'm the founder of the Museum of Woman, nourishing the primal power of woman to guide the world to goodness is our tagline. And the Goddess Temple of Orange County is the women's spiritual group of the Museum of Woman. The Museum of Woman is an educational institution designed to help both women and men understand their true history, which has been completely denied and suppressed and hidden from the average member of the public. None of us grew up with any knowledge that for thousands and thousands, at least some 250,000 years, pretty much all of humanity venerated a deity or a source, or their creation story was a female, was a great mother with many different names. The archaeological record shows, if you look up the Acheulean goddess, I believe that might be the oldest goddess figurine, fits in the palm of your hand, that we know of from the archaeological record. And it is agreed to be some 250,000 years old at minimum. So for thousands and thousands of years, we have understood, humanity has understood, that our natural, rightful authority is female. All the matriarchies that existed in ancient times and still are extant today. That's why the people who reject the idea of ancient matriarchies, it's incomprehensible to me that they do so, because there are still matriarchies today. You can go visit them. And so if they exist today, then surely they existed in history. So that's confusing to me how they can reject. I think Cynthia, her last name escapes me, wrote a book, The Myth of Ancient Matriarchies. And I do not understand how, when there are matriarchies today from which we can draw information and wisdom, how that can be just washed away. That's patriarchy, the erasure of what actually is in favor of a lie. So COVID closed our museum. The Orange County Health Department demanded that we close. And so we did close, and we put everything in storage. We're looking for our new space. But when people would come in, women, particularly when women would come in and see our many rooms with the statues of goddesses that most were reproductions, but museum quality reproductions and educational displays next to them saying what they were. When women would come in and see how for thousands and thousands of years, everyone honored what they thought of as the female divine source creation, being female, a great mother, women would just burst into tears because nobody had ever taught them that. So that is our role, is to help both men and women understand that if your culture, if your creation story says that everything was created by a male god, you will have a very, very different culture than if you acknowledge something closer to the truth, is that life is created by females. And so that's what our purpose is. Men who would come to the museum and walk through the rooms were just flabbergasted and were kind of silenced. They were quiet. They didn't know what to make of it. And that shows you that for both men and women, we just don't know our history. And we need to, because it would change everything. So that's the museum. Mm-hmm. And we are looking for our next space. And the Goddess Temple is the women's spiritual circle of the Museum of Woman. And while the museum is for everyone, men, women, children, and animals, we had lots of dogs visit, including our temple guardian, Joey. But the Goddess Temple events are for women only. And by women, you know what I mean.
Yeah, and when I think about, the mythology that I learned in school, starting in elementary school, those are very, man-washed, I guess, stories. Because, if you look at goddess mythology before, the Roman Empire, going as far as you can, they're really powerful stories. I mean, and you think of the Bible, you got Lilith, right, who was a very powerful female who was demonized. So our cultures, it just celebrates the male gaze on women, and even Zeus, Athena was born from his head.
Right.
And, yeah. So
these are all later creation stories created by men. But if you really dig, really dig and peel away the layers of history, you can often find an older, truer story that was told, that was woman honoring and woman centered, goddess centered. You can find those stories if you really, really look. Mm-hmm. I have come to the conclusion that all of these goddess stories that show the European stories, the Mediterranean stories, the Celtic stories, all of the stories that depict the goddess as broken or flawed, or she's messing up somehow, or she's taken prisoner somehow, or like the Egyptian story of Sekhmet, where Sekhmet is a crazy woman, a crazy goddess who's bloodthirsty, and she's rampaging through the countryside. And Ra, her father, is the one who saves the people by tricking her into drinking red beer. Sometimes it's pomegranate juice in some stories, but he tricks her. He gives her what she thinks is blood, and she's so bloodthirsty that she absolutely must have this drink. Well, he puts something in the red beer, and she falls asleep and stops her rampaging, and the people are now safe because of Ra, who has fixed everything, the male god. And this is this way, these stories, these ancient mythologies that are not as ancient as the truth. These are the way both men and women and children were trained to despise women, to the patriarchal reversal, because the original stories of Sekhmet are that she is kind of the everything goddess. She is a goddess of both light and dark. She has the solar disk on her head, but she is also a goddess of the dark and the night, and which is considered good, not evil. The dark is not evil. And she's a healer. There was, and I believe there still is, a small sect of priests, and thousands of years ago, the sect of priests who honored her and followed her were the healing priests of Sekhmet. So she was this, and she's fierce. If you're messing up, she'll stop you, but only for your own good. So she's a fierce goddess, but not a scary one. She loves you, and she's beautiful, and she's powerful. She's a lioness. She has the face of a lioness and the body of a woman. And just like every mother lioness, she raises her cubs in the way that teaches them how to handle life. And that means that she sometimes cuffs them and stops them and holds a boundary. But these are the original stories of Sekhmet. So when I hear these later stories that are still thousands of years old, I realize that those are the patriarchal twistings and reversals of the original stories. And I never believe them. And I know that if I can dig long enough, I might, in some cases, sometimes things have been lost, but if you dig long enough, you can find an earlier version of that goddess where she is whole unto herself. She is powerful and good and nothing but benevolent and wise. These are the true stories that we need to uncover and remember. And whenever we tell the story of Medusa or any of these goddesses who are supposed to be evil, we need to comment that this is the patriarchal story, not the original story.
Yeah, that is important. And even when I took a mythology class in college, I'm just remembering that I do remember at one point the professor saying that like the Greek and Roman iterations were very male-centric. The men who were retelling these stories, were writing them down. But she didn't go as far as you are to saying like there are original stories that are more empowering. And I just remember that this shift from more matriarchal, goddess-centered thinking changed when basically there was technology made that started making their own technology and agriculture and cities and civilizations starting, and then there was war, and then that's when patriarchy started taking over.
Right. And there are a lot of different ideas about how patriarchy arose. Gerda Lerner and many wonderful books have been written about all the different theories. It certainly could have been started with herding, when men figured out how to herd animals. They figured out they could also herd women and hobble them and keep them in pens, so to speak. Or it might have happened the other way around. Maybe men were already penning women in a certain way, preventing their freedom of movement, and then they figured out how to do that to animals. So it could have been herding, it could have been agriculture. There's lots of different theories, and we don't have to get into all those theories now, but the idea is that at some point, a few thousand years ago, things started turning. And from woman-centered and woman-honoring, one by one, things turned upside down, and woman became the chattel, woman became the victim, woman became the controlled one. And we've been suffering hideously. Humanity has been suffering hideously ever since, because this is a completely unnatural way to live. If you go back in history, the natural way to live, and my colleague, the brilliant Vajra has written a fantastic book on this called From a Hidden Stream, The Natural Spiritual Authority of Woman. And she goes into the history of how this has always been so up until just recently. Patriarchy is really a Johnny-come-lately to the scene of humanity. And yet the patriarchal mindset has done a fantastic job. You got to give him credit. My hat's off to him for doing a fantastic job of erasing what actually happened for thousands and thousands of years and retelling the mythology and the fairy tales, retelling the story to make woman the victim, woman the evil one, woman the crazy one who must be controlled by men. And you look at all our fairy tales, the queen is evil, and women are bad. The stepsisters in Cinderella are mean. All these fairy tales serve to train young girls and boys about what woman is. And what she is not good for her. How she is cast in these fairy tales and mythologies it only serves the domination of woman by men. And men are not served by this domination either. Men are decidedly unhappy in a patriarchy. They may have the external superficial power, but they are not joyful. They are not living joyfully and happily. Hardly any of them. But in matriarchies, they do live joyfully and happily in a woman-centered, woman-honoring culture. And so when men find out that the horrific burden that is placed on them in a patriarchy, where they too are oppressed in various ways by certain structures that do not serve them, when they find out that there's a different way to live, we know that matriarchy is not the reverse of patriarchy. We know that matriarchal cultures are egalitarian. The great Heide Goettner-Abendroth has written books on this, Societies of Peace and others, explaining how matriarchal structures are egalitarian societies where it's woman-centered and woman-honoring, taking care of mothers and children, because children are obviously the future. But the men are absolutely working together with the women to make life beautiful. And the Council of Grandmothers, these sorts of things, this is the natural way to live. When women start finding this out, then we will release this struggle idea that we have, this idea that we have to fight. And I understand. I'm a longtime feminist, and I understand that it feels like a fight every day. When I drive by on my way to somewhere I go frequently, I have to drive by a Hooters. And I'm just in sacred rage driving by the Hooters by the freeway when I think of what that is teaching young girls and young women. So I understand the fight aspect of it, but I also understand that energetically, psychologically, you can never win what is a fight if you think of yourself as a victim, or even if you think of the other as a powerful enemy to be fought. You have already lost. If you are in that mindset, it does not give you strength. We women must come from the mindset that we are the ancient queen, the rightful, natural spiritual authority, and everything is a spiritual matter, because spirituality to us is not the Bible or some codified set of texts. Spirituality to women's spirituality is just your relationship with all that is. And what is that like? What does that mean? What kind of relationship do you want to have with life, with nature, with other people, with children, with animals? So we must not see ourselves anymore as victims of patriarchy. And I'm not saying that we are not. I'm saying we must not any longer carry that label for ourselves, because the first step of power is to see yourself as a powerful being and work your magic, your psychological magic, your way of relating to people. When you walk in the world like a powerful being that is creating her own reality around her to a great extent. We live in a co-created reality, so other things do affect us, no doubt. But when you start walking that way in the world, a lot of things begin to shift for you as an individual. And this is why I work on the Queen teachings, to help women overcome the brainwashing that the Queen is evil. In every fairy tale, we are taught that the Queen is evil, every single one. And by the way, the evil stepmother is a version of the Queen, because the stepmother is also a queen figure. So you have Maiden, the four phases of woman: Maiden, Mother, Queen, and Wise Woman. And of those four phases, the Queen is the most denied, demonized, dismissed, denigrated archetype of woman of all. Because when the Queen steps forward in a woman, when she starts behaving as a queen, and I can get to what that means in a moment, then patriarchy starts to melt. Patriarchy cannot stand in the face of a true queen who understands who she is. Now, we have been so told as women that we don't want to be the queen. The queen is evil. Remember in high school, the worst thing in the world was for another girl or set of girls to say, "Who do you think you are?" Well, do you remember that? I mean,
the judgment of other girls.
I do. Mm-hmm. And it's like, don't be too big for your britches. Don't have self-esteem, basically. Obviously, none of us should be behaving badly towards others, but to walk in the world with confidence and self-esteem, who do you think you are? Well, if young women were taught that they were queen, then a lot would shift. First of all, they would no longer be the queen. One of the aspects, the queen has many powerful qualities, but one of them is that she has a vision for her life and a knowing of who she is. And she does not really, in the best sense of the word, she does not care what people think of her. That means that does not mean that she doesn't care about people. It means that the opinions of others do not drive her. Her own internal sense of herself is what motivates her to take the actions that she does. So that is part of what it means to be a queen. The opinions of others do not drive you. So many young women I counsel today, teenagers and young women, are almost everything they do is driven. What they wear, what they say, how they behave is driven by this internal demand to please men. Mm-hmm. And in order for us to move forward, we will never come back to our rightful place as leaders, the rightful leaders of humanity, while we are looking to men to please them in our actions.
And
Men should be looking to please us.
yeah. And a lot of that I think is unconscious too, because I don't think it's until you realize it yourself, or maybe you have a mentor like yourself who says you're doing that for men, it becomes visible. Because I know for myself, it was invisible for a very long time, how most of my actions were done to please men or to get approval from men. That's the biggest one, I think, for me. Getting that, like, you're smart enough, you're funny enough, you're pretty enough, you know, and
yeah,
there's a lot more of this kind of line of thinking that you bring up. I think going on right now, it's kind of swept aside by some people as just like self-help sort of thing, where you really own who you are and your power and not caring about what other people think. It's basically about having self-esteem and loving yourself, that like deep self-love. And I like the way that you put it with it's more about being a queen and being empowered, because it can take a little bit of the, I don't know, mainstream self-help stuff out of it for some people. Because I think I hear a lot of people sweep this under the rug, or they see it as toxic positivity, which does exist. But I just get kind of annoyed when I'm on Facebook or something like that, and people are talking down this kind of self-exploration. And a lot of them, I feel, are caught up in their victim story, and they want to be able to kind of live in that. And it's not, like you said, it's not saying it's not true. It's just saying you don't have to live in that story for the rest of your life.
Right. That does not have to be the way you hold yourself.
Yes.
You can recognize that the world might hold you that way, but it's very interesting. And toxic positivity is totally a thing. Spiritual bypassing, it's totally a thing.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is going back to the reality of what it means to be woman. The reality. This is not a la stuff, toxic positivity, and everything's okay, everything's fine. No, that's not what I'm talking about at all. Everything is not fine. Everything is damn well not fine.
Yeah.
And part of the queen has many qualities, but if we deny and dismiss her, then each female, no matter her age, does not have access to those qualities. So the maiden, the young woman, is free and wild and exploring, experiencing life. And she, by patriarchy, is twisted into the people pleaser, because the maiden is youthful and full of Shakti and energy. And so she's naturally pleasing to everyone, to men, women, children, animals, everyone. And she's like the naturally bursting forth energy of woman. And of course, these are phases of life, but they are also aspects and archetypes that live within every woman, no matter her age. So a 80-year-old woman can very much hold the energy of the maiden, that wild, natural, free way of being. But each of these archetypes can be twisted. And in patriarchy, that's the very definition of what patriarchy does, is twist these archetypes to screw with women, to mess us up. And we must not accept them. We must remember what the original is, just like we must remember what the original stories of goddess are. We must remember what the original story of woman is, and not allow men to write new creation stories for us, like Adam and Eve, where that's the basic creation story for so-called Western culture. And I object to the term Western, because on a globe, what's West and East? Well, only if you think of Europe as being your center. If you're Eurocentric, do you think of there being a West? So I object to that term. But that's our creation story. Adam and Eve is the basic Judeo-Christian creation story for humanity. And when you accept, even if you're not a Christian, it's still a story that most of society is imbued with. And so you have to deal with it, whether you're a Christian or not. You have to, when you go to the grocery store, you're dealing with that creation story that's playing out in the minds and hearts, and very subtly, just as you pointed out a few minutes ago, it's invisible, but it's the creation story. We need to reject the creation stories that men have told, that men have written for us, and we need to go back to the original creation stories. So the creation story of the maiden is that she's wild, she's free, she's powerful, but patriarchy has twisted that and told new stories about the maiden, that she's sexually a temptress, and there's a lot of negative things. And so in order for young women to feel good about themselves, they become the people pleaser. That's the imbalance of the maiden archetype. The mother archetype is obviously the woman who has begun giving birth, but not necessarily to children. You don't have to be a mother to be in your mother years. You don't have to be a mother of babies, of human children, to be in your mother. Your mother years are like, I don't know, 20 to 45, perimenopause. And the mother energy is the creation energy of what you are going to bring forth from the unseen world into the seen world. When a woman writes a book, she's bringing information from an unseen world inside herself, her own thoughts and beliefs and knowing and values and wisdom. And she's then birthing it into the world. So she's a mother. Every woman who's ever written a book is a mother. And we're mothers to so many things. We are mothers every time we create something, and then we take some responsibility for it, to see it nurture, see it be nurtured, and then see it grow in the world until it can take care of itself. So a woman going on a book tour she's nurturing her infant child and helping it grow and stand on its own. But the patriarchal reversal for the mother archetype and the mother is the worker. The mother is, if the maiden is free and has no to-do lists and no computer, she's running naked like Diana through the forest with her hounds baying at her feet, then the mother is actually the worker, because it requires a great deal of work to create something and then take care of it once you've birthed it. That's all work. That's why they call it labor. It's work. So this is good. Working is good. Women derive immense, just like men, derive immense satisfaction from working, from creating something, and then helping it live in the world. But the patriarchal reversal is that woman's duty is to take care of the world, to take care of others, to pick up her husband's socks, and that's unfortunately where 80% of American women live, in the imbalanced archetype of the mother aspect. It's good to work, but it's not good to work without boundaries. And the queen archetype is, the phase of life is from 45 to 65, approximately, decide for yourself, when you go into perimenopause or when you want to claim that aspect. But the queen is the one who holds boundaries. The queen is the rule setter for life. And without boundaries, the mother is overworked. And that's what's happened to women in our culture today. We are so overworked because we do not have a queen that stands up and says, bullshit to this, enough of this. This is unfair. This is not right. This is not the way humans are meant to live together, with women slaving away and doing 2/3 of the work. No. And we know that women do up to 2/3 of the work in every family. Whatever you think the work is, women do 2/3 of it. We know that's true. So a woman with a strong queen, this is why we have to rewrite these creation stories. The queen holds the vision for life. She holds the vision for her family. And if you ask most women, what's the vision for your family? They have absolutely no idea what to say. No idea. I learned this. I think the reason I became so interested in this topic, although I did not have the ideas about maiden, mother, queen, and wise woman, is watching my own mom. My own mom, my dad was not a bad guy, but he was selfish. And he was like an adventurer and kind of a pirate. And he never really wanted to hold down a steady job, even though he had a wife and 2 children. So he was constantly looking for buried treasure, believe it or not. And of course, he never found any, which is why we were always broke and always, being evicted from our houses and stuff like that. But my mother was so immersed, drowning in her own imbalanced mother archetype that said, I am duty bound to just take care of others and not hold any boundaries, just give everybody what they want. And that's what she did in our family. When my dad wanted to move again, for the 4th time that year, she did not hold a boundary and say, Biff, we're not doing that. That's no way to live. We need to settle down and you need to take care of this family and we need to live right. No, she didn't do that because she had been trained by patriarchy, by the dominator mindset of one that tells women that we must provide what others want. And so as I grew up, I saw how much our family suffered because of her failure to be a queen, because of her failure to have a vision for our family and see what that was and then implement it with clarity and boundaries. And that suffering, seeing that suffering and then becoming clear on how wrong it is and how unnecessary it is and how widespread it is in families all over the world. Here in America, is where my focus is. This is so ubiquitous. This is so widespread that I have come to believe that when women find their queen, stand up, have a vision for life, and then explain that clearly to all, particularly to the men in their lives, particularly to their little boys, and then lead and hold boundaries, not to oppress men, not to rule over men, but to give us the life that we need, that each family needs. And that's my mission in life, is to help women bring life back to goodness.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up some thoughts that I had, because I immediately think of maiden, mother, crone.
Right.
Which crone is not as nice of a word as wise woman. And with the queen, I mean, the queen archetype, is that something that you kind of came up with, or is that something you found in your research?
Oh, I don't believe that I came up with it completely originally. The first book I ever read on the queen archetype was by Donna Hennis, lovely, wonderful lady. And she has a slightly different take on the queen from what I do. But I honor her for being the one who, for me, brought forth the queen archetype as a thing. I also honor Barbara Ardinger, who, when I was creating the Goddess Temple, a physical place, we had statues, maiden, mother, and crone, because I too, in goddess spirituality, I too was raised with the idea of the Trinity, maiden, mother, crone. But what's missing? Think about what's missing. The maiden, the mother, and the crone. You go from mother to old woman immediately. And I've been to croning ceremonies of women 56 years old, because that's a thing. And I could see how it did not fit them. They did not feel like a crone yet. And it came to me, Barbara Ardinger came into the museum one day when I was creating, it was before we opened, and I was creating different stations for the museum aspect of it. And she and I talked, and she brought it up to me. She said, the queen, you have 4 corners of this room. You have four phases of so many things. You have four elements: air, water, fire, and earth. There's so many things that are four. And four is the stable balance of a triangle is not nearly as stable as a square. And that's why pyramids are, made in the way they are. So it became Maiden, Mother, Queen, and Wise Woman. And then I started researching heavily in many different aspects. And I came up with the ideas of the qualities that belonged to each set. And if you deny one aspect, then you are going to tip over into imbalance. Without the queen, the queen is the sort of like the car. Your car has like a governor in it that takes care of a lot of things that you don't have to take care of. The queen, if you have come from a queenly way of walking in the world, you have a vision for your life, you have utter clarity on what's going on in your life and the world around you, and you have good boundaries. You have excellent boundaries that you compassionately and lovingly enforce when things are going wrong. Because and women don't really do that. And most mothers do not have good enough boundaries. All these things that are going wrong with women's families, it's because they lack boundaries. Men watching porn all day. Oh, she should be stopping that shit right now. That's going to destroy their sex life. It's going to destroy her husband watching porn. We all know this. Gail Dines, all the research is in. Porn destroys relationships. And any woman who permits, and you say, well, I can't control him. Well, actually, what you can do is say, this is the vision I have for life. Are you in agreement with this vision? And the vision will be respect for women, respect for animals and life, wholesome living, whatever her idea. That's up to each woman to decide what her vision is. But certainly respect for woman must be one of the top three. And you say to the man, and ideally you would say this before you married him, you would say, this is my vision for life. And we must be in agreement with the vision for life. This is the problem with my parents. My mom did have a vision for life, and it was to live in the suburbs with the little white picket fence and, the two children, and have her husband go to work every day and then come home, and she would be the housewife and cook dinner for him and keep the house nice. And her vision was to be a housewife. And that was natural for my mom. And she would have been very happy to live that vision out. But my dad's vision for life was to chase buried treasure in the ocean all over hell and gone. And she did not find out. She did not make clear to him what her vision was for life. She did not get agreement from him. And then when they were married, she did not enforce any boundaries to hold to that vision. And so let's say a man is watching porn, your husband's watching porn. Well, now you need to clarify your vision for life, and you need to describe why watching porn is not in your vision. Or you can even back up. You can say, here's my vision for life, respect for women. Do you agree with that? Husband, do you agree with that? And if he's smart, he'll say, well, yes, of course I do. And then you say, well, let me ask you, does watching porn support that vision? Everything crumbles.
You are listening to WLRN.
So obviously, then you have to take a look at, well, obviously you don't hold the same vision for life that I do. So this is what I believe women need to do. We need to have a new creation story for ourselves, because Adam and Eve is not working for anybody. And we also need to understand what our vision for life is now, what our fairy tale is, And in our fairy tale, the queen will not be evil. She will be the rightful guide to humanity, the wise one, the one who is the matriarch. Her sisters, like in the Cinderella story, the two sisters are mean and bad. Well, this is just teaching women that they cannot rely, because this is the thing patriarchy has to do. Patriarchy absolutely has to bust up the tight sisterhood, the connection that women have with each other, and make us not trust each other, make us see each other as competition for the resource that is the male. And so that's what these fairy tales tell us. So we need to, and, Barbara Walker wrote, can't remember the name of her book, Feminist Fairy Tales. I think it was, Feminist Fairy Tales, Barbara Walker. So there are women who have worked on this, and we need to bring them forth, bring these new visions for life forward, and get over the idea that you being queen means that you are emasculating a man. Because a lot of women have that idea. Well, if I do this, then I'm taking charge, I'm ruling, and my husband will feel emasculated. No, we teach in the Queen Teachings how to do this in a way where the man absolutely maintains his own sense of integrity and power. And that's important. It's important not to, I really object to all these ads that there's a lot of television ads and different advertising that casts men as the stupid one, the dumb husband, or and those are offensive, and we must stop that. There should be no male bashing in the Queen's world.
Yeah, and you brought up that the Maiden, she often gets recast as the temptress. And then you also brought up pornography. And one thing that came to mind is I could see a man saying, well, yeah, pornography does respect women because it's consensual and some women want it and they're getting paid. They have a career. And then with the temptress, young women who decide to do like OnlyFans or things like that, and that it's empowering. This is a choice. The choice feminism. And I think that's a way of many women and girls of trying to find that powerful center, that queen, but they do it through a patriarchal lens unknowingly. I think they want to believe what they're saying about sex positivity and pornography, but once there's that mirror and research like Gail Dines, it's really hard to look back at that way of thinking. So what do you think about that when women try to be empowered through means that are not empowering, like pornography?
Speaking to the temptress for a moment, this is a way of making woman at fault. When I was a young woman, I was very attractive. I was cute. Men chased me all over. I could not walk down an airport concourse without having 15 men try to get my phone number. So I remember what that was like. But it was always cast as, look what you have done to me. I have had men point to their crotch, their erection, and say, look what you do to me. So it's suddenly my fault and my responsibility somehow that I am the temptress. I am the one who is at fault. And now, obviously, if I'm a decent person, I have to fix it for them. So a lot of women are subtly brainwashed by this. Men can control themselves. They do in matriarchies. And women are tempting in so many ways, not just sexually, but when women are not cast as objects, but as beings to be honored, respected, and even venerated, then that doesn't happen. So our culture makes a woman's beauty and attractiveness is somehow her fault, that men are attracted to her. It's all her fault. With regard to the OnlyFans and pornography and that being empowering for women, I think most of your listeners have researched this pretty heavily and believe the same things that I do. The vagina is not a workplace. This is, and for those of your audience who are atheist, let me just say, I believe that a lot of women who say they are atheist, they are simply responding to the patriarchal God. Well, I'm an atheist too. I had a conversation with Ruth Barrett and Vajra recently, and we were talking about this. And Ruth pointed out that she tells people that she's an atheist too, because she does not believe in the patriarchal Judeo-Christian God. And that's what it means to be an atheist, that you don't believe in God. And so I'm an atheist too. If you understood spirituality, so you can put religion aside, because pretty much every religion I know of, organized religion, is patriarchally based and male-centered. So just, throw those out. Your relationship with all life is spirituality. And so we are all inherently spiritual beings. And the body of woman is different from the body of man because she has, now I can get mystical here, and some of your listeners may not care for this, so you can reframe it however you want, but we have a portal in our bodies that allows us, the womb, that allows us to connect to all that is in a different way from men. I know this to be true myself. And people say, well, what about you have a hysterectomy? Well, you still have your etheric body, and you still were born with it. So there's something different about women. We have different powers. We are, and this is something that women are uncomfortable when I say sometimes, women are more powerful than men. Let's just say it. We have greater powers. We can create a baby and bring a baby forth. That's it. What power is greater than that to continue life? And so let's just acknowledge that women are the ancient, natural, spiritual authority, and everything is a spiritual matter. If you look at it in that lens, the lens of spirituality is your relationship with all life. So to make your body, particularly that area that is a sacred and magical portal to all infinity, if you make that a workplace, you are destroying the magic in a woman. You are destroying her sense of herself. You are destroying the ancient ties that she has to every grandmother she has in her lineage. You are destroying that. Now, I have interviewed dozens and dozens. I lived in Las Vegas for many years, and Las Vegas is a place of prostitution. And so I have interviewed, I never really counted it, but probably over 200 prostitutes, women who are prostituted women. And there's a lot of bluff and bravado. I'm making my own way in the world. I'm in charge. And of course, that's not true when they have a pimp or many of the women had a call service and they carried a beeper. It's different today. This was back in the 70s and 80s. They carried a beeper and then they would be beeped at various times during the day. And they would have to go to a hotel room. And they never knew what was behind the door of that hotel room. It could have been just some normal Joe who just wants to have an orgasm with a decent looking woman, doesn't want to hurt her. But oftentimes it was somebody who did want to hurt her, or more than one man, in which case now you're really in trouble. I spoke with one who she was pressured. Behind the door were two men, and they wanted to put their penises in her both orifices at one time. That's what they wanted. And she did it because she wanted the money. And she sat with me and told me this had happened just the night before. And she sat with me and she told me that she wasn't a very articulate person, but you could see that she hadn't done any personal work and didn't really understand what was going on inside her. But in so many words, she told me that her entire sense of herself was just destroyed after that. She just had nothing. She felt like nothing. In fact, I believe those were her words. I feel like I'm nothing. And so these women, first of all, you say, oh, well, they're choosing this. When you grow up in a patriarchy, and particularly if you're unlucky enough to grow up in a family that denigrates you as a woman, which a huge number of families do, that wasn't the case for me. I was not denigrated as an individual being. I was mostly respected. Watching my mother kowtow to my father helped to teach me that that's what I was supposed to do with men. But yeah, I had a fairly reasonable sense of self-confidence. But many women don't grow up that way at all. And they're abused by their brothers, by their fathers, by their uncles. They're many terrible abuse psychologically, abuse physically. And so can you really say that those women, after 16 years, let's say, you're starting to think about becoming a prostitute at 16, you have been brainwashed and conditioned for 16 years. Can you really say that you are making a free choice any more than the elephant? You know how they train elephants in circuses to stay with a tiny little chain. They train them with a chain when they're babies, and over the years the baby cannot move the chain, and as they grow up, they just give up. Learned helplessness. They just give up, and they don't ever try to move the chain and break away, even though by the time they're full grown, they easily could. It's the same thing with women. Do you really are those elephants making a free choice, although they have the power to leave? No, they're not. They've been conditioned. And every single woman in this culture is conditioned brutally every day. I drive by a Hooters, and if I wasn't aware of what that all meant, if I hadn't done this work and met women like you and the other women you interview and the women teachers I've had in my life, many of them, if I hadn't been fortunate enough to go down that path, I could have become a prostitute also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could happen to any of us. Well, and one thing, my cat here's my cat. When you think about the maiden mother crone, and you mentioned that there's a missing link between mother and crone, and what I was thinking is how a lot of women, they put their whole life into the mother, and then once the kids are gone, it's the empty nest syndrome. And then the relationship between the man and the wife is really off because their whole relationship was built on raising kids, or, they don't have intimacy or whatever. And then there's also that fear of, if I'm not mother anymore, then I'm old woman. Mm-hmm. And obviously these archetypes have to do with age, but you also mentioned that it's a square that needs to be balanced. So can a woman in her 20s, say, who you could argue is a maiden, could she also embody the other three archetypes.
She not only can she must, in order to be balanced and powerful and have agency in the world. She must be familiar with her maiden and what that truly is, not the twisted patriarchal version. She must be familiar with her working mother, creating and birthing things into the world. She must be familiar with her queen, who has the vision for life, who has clarity, who speaks. Who is the one who speaks to the people? Well, it's the sovereign, it's the ruler. So, and that's a big problem for women, because women are not the ones speaking for our culture, because we don't have access to we're not accessing our queen. Queen is the one who stands up before the people and tells them the vision for life, the good vision for life, how we're going to live. And she also tells them what the boundaries are. If you mess up and you refuse to go along with the shared good, with the respect for all life, with the, whatever the vision is. And the wise woman, crone, I changed it to wise woman for the simple reason that I am working on creating more bridges to, quote, average women who don't know anything about this. And if you use certain words like witch, if you use certain words like crone, these words are such pejoratives now. Yes, I believe we need to reclaim them. But first, we need to reach the women that need to hear this. And so it does not serve my work to use those words over much. You rarely hear me talk about witches or witchcraft or casting spells or any of that. And yet my world is full of that, but I reframe it so that my work can receive a wider audience. I don't want to put women off with the phrase crone. It's like, I don't want to be a crone. I don't want to be an old woman. I live in Newport Beach. We have more plastic surgery around here trying to stay young than almost anywhere else in the world. You use the word crone around here, nobody's going to ask you to speak on the crone. So I use the word wise woman, but it means the same thing. And she's the woman 65 to 85. Now, there is an archetype after that, and that's the hag. And that is another word that must be reclaimed. The hag has certainly been taken over by patriarchy, as you old hag. It's certainly an insult. But hag comes from, many of your listeners know, hag comes from the Greek word hagia, which means holy woman. Mm-hmm. So by the time you're 85, you're the holy woman. I didn't speak much about the wise woman, the crone. Her powers, I spoke about the powers of the maiden mother and the queen. The powers of the wise woman is she is the library for humanity. She holds the wisdom of the ages. That's what grandmothers are supposed to do. They are supposed to remind us of the wisdom of the ages, that all that they have learned in their lifetime, all their grandmothers told them, they carry the wisdom. And we as a culture, turning away from the elder, particularly the elder woman, and turning her into something to be mocked, the little old lady in tennis shoes and, little old woman. And she's dismissed and mocked as being ineffectual. About all she's good for is to take care of the kids when the mom is too busy. And so she's sort of like a wrinkled, unattractive mother. And that's the patriarchal reversal. No, we are foolish to throw away our elders. We must reframe society in ways that where we don't shunt our elders off into nursing homes, where their wisdom is separate from our lives and where we pop in to visit them, give them a birthday present and then leave. No, somehow we have to find new ways to incorporate the leadership and the respect. If the queen is the active one, the leader, the one who is dynamically leading, the wise woman, she may be past that in that she might not be actively leading and working that hard. In our temple, we said that the wise women did not have to do the heavy lifting. They were there to guide us with their wisdom. We didn't make them mop the floors, even if they wanted to. We didn't make them clean the bathrooms. That was for the younger women. So wise women are to be respected. Now, many wise women I know have a huge, powerful queenly presence, and they are still very much an activist. They are still very much out there in front, writing and speaking and reading, because the queen, all the edges of these archetypes for the phases of life are a little bit malleable for each woman. I'm 67, but I do not carry yet the energy of the old woman. I will look forward to the day when I do, and I will embrace that, and I'm not afraid of that. But you can feel, just by looking at me, by talking to me, you can feel that I still am very much an activist. I'm still very much out there in the world, speaking to people, teaching, leading. And so I'm not claiming, even though the borders, I say the queen is 45 to 65. So technically I'm in my wise woman years, but I'm not claiming it yet because I don't feel there. I probably will feel like a wise woman, maybe closer to 70, 75. So we'll see, so it's individual for every woman. And yet I know many women my age who are absolutely in their wise woman years. You can feel it. They're settled. They're quiet. They want to live quiet, peaceful lives. And that's to be honored also. So this is every individual woman's choice. What was your question?
I think you answered it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you bring up that there shouldn't be judgment for what phase you're at, because there's a lot of, I think, stigma to like the older woman who just wants to be at home and read books and relax and
yes,
maybe have her grandkids visit. You know?
She's a treasure. She's a treasure. Now, my grandma was not like that. I had two grandmas, and one of them was kind of like that, and the other was not. So I didn't really get the benefit of that, but I can see how that would be lovely for a child to go visit grandma at home and have a grandma make her a meal and tell her wonderful stories of the family and give her advice. We very much need that. And to see the old woman, even the phrase old woman is kind of an insult.
Yeah.
And why? Why should it be? Young woman is not an insult. Why should old woman? When I'm 85 or 95, I will be an old woman. And there is no insult in that. But the erasure of the elder woman, elder is maybe a more palatable term for many people. The erasure of the elder woman from our society is one of the great invisible crimes. And you see it in the retelling of the fairy story of Cinderella. First of all, her mother's mean, her two stepsisters are mean. And the only good one, the only helpful one is the fairy godmother, the old woman who comes to help her. And now we have erased that in this latest Disney retelling of Cinderella. We have erased one of the very few wonderful old woman icons that we have, and we have replaced her with a male. And I read the promotional material for this so-called feminist retelling. It's not feminist at all. It's just utter bullshit. And it said that the fairy godmother had been recast in the non-binary role of, Billy Porter. And I thought, well, if it's non-binary, then why the hell did they call it a fairy godmother? I mean, come on, that's, talking out of both sides of your mouth, as my friend Vajra said. So what they have done is they have, what we've seen recently, what you've seen, is the trying to convince us all, men and women, that men are better women than women. And now here you see it again in Cinderella. It's a fairy godmother, but no, the fabulous G. It was more fabulous than that dumpy old woman fairy godmother. And he just happens to have a penis. So he is a better fairy godmother, fairy god female. He's a better woman than the actual woman herself. And you see this constantly now. You saw it with Caitlyn Jenner winning the Woman of the Year award on Glamour magazine. Oh my goddess. So he is now a better woman. He gets the prize for best woman of the year instead of an actual woman. And you see it in all of the sports crap that's going on, that these men who are competing with their bigger muscles, with their larger lung capacity, with their strength, they're competing against actual women and calling themselves women. They're better women now than women themselves. Women with penises are better women than women with vaginas. I just bullshit on all of that. Oh my goddess. No, no, no. The queen in every woman who sees this must stand up and say, absolutely not. And fortunately, aren't we now starting to see women standing up against this? I'm seeing it more and more. Are you?
Yeah, I am seeing it more and more. I think more of the quote unquote average women who are seeing this happen, who haven't been in this conversation at all, and then they're learning about, what's his name, Leah Thomas with the Penn swimming. It's just like, what?
What? I know that's the reaction that the average woman has. It's like, what? How can this be happening? And it's so sad to me. And I'm on a mission to change this. It's so sad to me that some of my heroes are taken in by this so far. One of my favorite comedians is Stephen Colbert. I watch him faithfully. And so far, he is completely taken in by the whole trans cult, the whole movement. And as I must point out that my friend and colleague Vajra has convinced me to not use the word trans anymore. It's not transhumanism. It's not trans woman or trans man. It's dehumanism, because there is no going beyond. You cannot transcend your physical body. Yeah. There is no such thing. And I think Jennifer Billick pointed that out in something recently. That there is no trans woman, trans man. These are fake gaslighting terms that discuss that label something that doesn't actually exist. And that's the definition of gaslighting, is to get us to believe something that doesn't exist. So no, they're men. Yeah. People with penises are men. And we must just call them men in the face of, and I know it's hard. I was deplatformed from the Glastonbury Goddess Conference this past summer because of my stance on this so-called trans cult. And they were, we're inclusive for all. We must honor these people and their, terrible thing they go through in society. What? So you throw women completely under the bus. And what I was speaking on was not even related to trans theory and the trans cult. I was speaking on the queen archetype. I was never going to mention the trans issue. But because a couple of activists, trans activists, called and complained, I got eliminated. I've been attending the Glastonbury Goddess Conference as a speaker for many years now, and I enjoy going. And it's a wonderful event. And now the new people in charge of it have decided that men are more important than women. So I got cut. And many of my friends and colleagues, Ruth Barrett and others, have been similarly deplatformed. We all know all the deplatforming that's going on right now. So speaking up can affect your livelihood, can get you fired, can get you canceled. And each woman has to make her own decision, because we all have to pay the rent and we all have to put food on the table and we all have to take care of our kids and whatever your life is. At the same time, somehow we have to find ways to stand up as queens and continue to hold the vision with boundaries. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's necessary. And thank the goddess for the many, many women who have inspired me, many of them on your show, who have done that work bravely. Thank you to them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it makes us stronger. With every woman who speaks up, it makes the collective just that much stronger.
Right.
And one thing I want to point out about Cinderella is I wanted to review a little bit classic fairy tales.
Oh, yeah.
So I mainly just looked at Charles Perrault and the Grimm brothers. So those are the two that we're most familiar with. But even in those stories, which is dripping with patriarchy, the Fairy Godmother in the Grimm version is good and helps Cinderella. And in the Charles Perrault one, Charles Perrault, it's actually a fairy godmother who helps her escape her father who wants to marry her. And then in the Grimm one, it's actually her mother spirit who is buried under a tree who helps her escape her stepsisters. So even in those patriarchal stories, those are they're good.
Yes, and I think the beauty and the understanding of the old woman as beautiful and wise and whole does leak through. Unfortunately, you can find many more examples where she is demonized. In Hansel and Gretel, the old woman is evil. In Jack and the Beanstalk, the mother, she's not cast as an old woman, but she literally cannot, this is a patriarchal reversal. Women are the original shamans. And to be a shaman means you bring information from the unseen world into the seen world. That's what a shaman is. And that's what women do every time they give birth. They bring information from the unseen world, the spirit world, into the physical world, and they birth a baby. So women are the original shamans. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Siberian word for shaman means woman, or is related to the female. So that's acknowledged. And so woman is the original magician, and yet men are constantly cast. Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, men are constantly cast as the magician. And in Jack and the Beanstalk, the mother is so ignorant that she cannot see that the beans are magic, and so she throws them away. And this is another reversal in the correct telling of the story. From an ancient perspective, Jack would have come home and his mother would have immediately, with her deep intuition and her wisdom, she would have seen that the beans were magic and she would not have thrown them away. But no, she's an idiot. So she just throws these beans away as if they're nothing. And all of these subtleties in these fairy stories, yes, you're absolutely right. There's a few where something comes through of the original goodness, but most of them, the queen is evil. I mean, think of all the evil queens. In Sleeping Beauty, the old woman, the witch, is evil. And also in Sleeping Beauty, my other favorite thing that I hate about that is she needs a man to wake up. She's nothing. She's just unconscious until a man comes along and helps her out. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, that what a terrible, terrible story to tell. And in many of these stories, in some of them, animals are friendly, but in many of them, they're not. In many of them, the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood, in Pinocchio, there's Jiminy Cricket, but then there's a whole bunch of animals that are not helpful. So these fairy stories have to be deconstructed, and we have to see. I would not just read a book of fairy stories to my children. I would read the classic, feminist fairy tales. I would read Barbara Walker's feminist fairy tales. I would read Rebekah Gienapp's 12 fairy tales for young feminists. I would sit with my little girl and I would show her exactly how the world is trying to condition her, and let her find her queen inside that sees all that with clarity. The powers of the queen: clarity, vision, boundaries, leadership. I would have her find that in herself and grow up to be different and not affected by those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have a 6-year-old son, so I think even sharing that with little boys is good too, because then that helps their unconscious sort of development of,
right.
I'm impressed with him. He loves girls. He doesn't
and
feminine stuff, and
he's being trained by a very conscious woman who sees what's going on, sees the dominator model, and is not going to allow him to be conditioned 100% by that. Obviously, you can't control everything he hears and sees, and going to school and everything. But he will become a very aware man because of you. And thank you for that.
Thank you. Oh, just one thing I wanted to bring up, because you said you got deplatformed from the
Glastonbury Goddess Conference.
Glastonbury. Okay. And is that a women-only event?
No.
Okay. No. It's kind of like a pagan type thing?
I don't believe they call themselves, I think they call themselves goddess, not pagan, but it would not be unfair to say pagan. It's goddess oriented. Yeah. But men come.
Right.
And so it's a very open conference. Anyone can come.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I know for myself, kind of sort of being raised Catholic, and then wanting to discover my own beliefs, I went to paganism and Wicca, which I think is normal for a lot of people seeking spirituality outside of the Christian model. But what I've noticed in those communities, in the pagan Wiccan communities, is there's the trans thing's taken over, because it's like you can have a female soul in a male body kind of thing. And I always look with scrutiny when it's a woman only event. And sure enough, a lot of times it's like anybody who identifies as a woman is welcome.
Well, this brings up a very important topic that is little spoken of, and that is the assigning of qualities and characteristics to each sex. Mm-hmm. So what does it mean? And when you start to examine this, it all falls apart very rapidly. What does it mean to have a female soul? What does that mean? What does it mean to have a male soul? Yeah. The soul doesn't have a body. So how are you identifying that as a female soul? What does that really mean? Pick it apart, and you will see that it's just a bunch of stereotypes that we associate with females and a bunch of stereotypes that we associate with males. And that has to be pulled apart and brought down, because as long as we continue, and I do a lot of work with so-called New Age people, and they're constantly talking about the female divine, the masculine divine, the feminine divine. Okay, what does that mean? What's happening, if you really look at it, what's happening is we are accepting a bunch of qualities on the one hand for women that are yin, and we are accepting a bunch of qualities on the other hand for men that are yang. So men get all the yang stuff, the dynamism, the assertiveness, the putting yourself out there into the world. All that's for men. That's male. And women get passivity, nurturing, love, softness, sweetness, demure. What a bunch of bullshit. That does not make a woman. I know plenty of women who are not very many of those things, and they're still women. And so we have to bust this paradigm that people have a male and female side. No, you don't. Energy is like electricity. It's neutral until you plug it in to a lamp. Now, the lamp can be either male or female. The electricity is not male or female. It's just energy. So I, as a woman, I am a woman, and I have a lot of yang energy. And people have called me very, quote, male. And I ask them, what does that mean that I'm male? What does that mean? And then others have called me very feminine because I wear makeup. And so what does that mean? That I'm feminine because I wear makeup? Well, men can wear makeup too, and they're still male. So this whole idea of yin qualities belong to women. And so you have a female soul. I'm not even sure what that means. You have a female soul. What do you think that means? When somebody says they have a female soul in a male body, what do you think they're thinking?
That they're not like other men, like the manly men. They don't fit that mold.
Right.
So I think
they don't fit the gender stereotype, the sex stereotype. Pardon me. I meant to say sex stereotype. They don't fit the sex stereotype. So they must be a woman. They must be with that other. And all these qualities of love and aggression and assertiveness and dynamism and reaching for what you want and magnetizing what you want instead of reaching for it. That's supposed to be female, just sitting there doing nothing seemingly and magnetizing. And I'm not mocking that because I work on magnetizing things all the time. It's a great way to bring things into your life without a lot of effort. So I'm not mocking that quality, but it's supposed to be a female quality. You're just supposed to be like, look passive and just wait for the man to come to you and all these things. These are human qualities, and we must no longer assign a sex to each set. They're all just human qualities, and each person can partake of and express any of those in any combination whenever they want. That's what true freedom means. That's when we have that, then we will go beyond all this trans nonsense. Then when we really let men have access to the full range of humanity and human experience and feeling and characteristics and qualities and longings and beliefs, when we let men have full access to that, then they can continue to be men and have what we would have called before a female soul. No, they just have a gentle soul where they just want to wear makeup.
Yeah.
Just let all that go.
I was reflecting yesterday about gender neutral parenting and how people will phrase that as using the they them pronouns and also choosing colors that are supposedly gender neutral, like green
or yellow.
Yeah. And I was reflecting on that because it doesn't make any sense. And one time I was at the store with my son. We were in the toy section just browsing. And from the corner of my eye, I saw a mom with two sons walking by. And I couldn't tell how old the sons were because I was just kind of looking. They were probably around 10 or so, maybe a little younger. And they said something like, "Oh, that's cool." And she said, "That's for girls." And it's just like, no. And
that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Unless it's a tampon, a box of tampons.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Is that what you were thinking? Yeah, yeah. Unless it's unless it truly is specifically for females, like a box of tampons, then no, that's so wrong. That's so wrong.
Yeah, well, because she was very loud, so I get very loud when my
what did you do? What did you do?
Well, not at that time, but I've been at the store and he's looked at something and go like, "That's for girls," and I said, "No, there's no such thing as boys and girl toys. They're all just toys.
They're all just toys."
And right. I've never told him that certain colors are for girls and certain colors are for boys or any of that stuff. So his favorite colors are purple and pink. And one day he's played with makeup before. He has his own little makeup bag. And she said, "Can boys wear makeup?" And I said, "Of course, why not?"
Right.
And so he gets other messages probably outside of me.
Indeed, I'm sure he does. But I have a feeling that yours are the most powerful as his mother.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And so, there's like big content creators out there who are makeup artists and stuff. And a lot of them are men. And they still call themselves men. And a lot of them are gay.
I follow Wayne Goss and some others because I'm interested in makeup. I love makeup. I consider my face sort of like a palette for art. And I like to, make my art every morning. And I follow several, what's his name? Christopher. He's the makeover guy. His name escapes me at the moment. But some of the best makeup artists are men. And they use their own faces. I just wish Wayne would shave his beard because it looks stupid when he puts on foundation.
Yeah, the one I'm thinking of, his name's James Welch, and he always has a beard.
Okay.
He looks, and he does makeup very well. And I even see, look, boy wearing makeup.
Yes, right. Right.
Okay.
The ancient Egyptians, men wore eye makeup. Mm-hmm. That's a historical. You look down through the ages, men wore skirts, men wore high heels, men wore in all these different cultures. So this is just our own cultural blindness that we think this is what male is and this is what female is. It's just stupid.
Yes, I agree.
And now I will say that there's this, I don't remember his name, but there's this kind of well-known man I think he's British and he's sort of bald or balding, and he wears tight pencil skirts and very high heels. And he's got really nice legs. And you see pictures of him all over the internet. I think we have to be careful about the fetish aspect. There is a difference between being interested in something and fetishizing it. When you are wearing 6-inch stiletto heels that you can barely walk in, that's not an interest. That is, you're making yourself physically uncomfortable. It's as uncomfortable for a man to walk in those as it is for a woman. Women should not be wearing those either because they're just insane. And you're talking, here's a woman talking who has some high heels, not that high, but I still wear heels occasionally, but I recognize the stupidity of them. But my eye is trained by my culture to see them as beautiful. But more and more, I am seeing that they are not beautiful. They are stupid. And so when a man wears these super stiletto heels and everybody is, oh, he's so brave and so wonderful that he can break out of the paradigms. No, that guy has a shoe and foot fetish because there's something different about, there's an unwholesomeness to hurting yourself. And I don't know where that line is. Maybe every person has to draw it for themselves. But I know there is a line between being interested in something and fetishizing it and the autogynephilia of seeing yourself in women's clothing. That's not the breaking of boundaries. That's a fetish. And that should be called out. We should become aware of that and we should see it when it's happening.
Yeah, I think that is a really good difference to bring up because they often do, the autogonophiles do often seem to be in constrictive clothing.
Yes.
All the pictures you see, it's almost like they're pornified.
Yes.
And they're like, speaking of content creators, there is another makeup artist I follow who he's bald and he puts on wigs and he wears like kind of feminine tops. And for him, I wouldn't see him as an autogonophile because he's just kind of plain. That's what it looks like to me. I would have to research him more to really see if I can make that distinction. But like, there's a difference between putting on a flowy dress because it feels good and you like the look of the flowy dress and being dressed up like a dominatrix or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And going out in public and having other people participate in what you're doing.
Forcing other people to accept you, trying to force people to accept you in that way. Well, putting Caitlyn Jenner, I will call him by the name he chooses to be called now, putting him on the cover of, was it Vanity Fair or Glamour? I can't remember. But
he was Vanity Fair.
Vanity Fair, putting him on the cover in a very tight corset where clearly his natural body parts are smashed down between his legs. That's all fetish. That I call that out as autogynephilia and fetishization. That's a fetish.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any kind of final things you want to bring up about maybe your class? Like, is your class in session? Are listeners able to sign up for it, or what's going on?
I am teaching my class on an individual basis. You pay for the videos, 15 videos, along with a book that goes with it. And then I work with each student individually on making their way through how it applies to their life personally, because it's a very personal thing. You got women of all different ages. You got women of all different socioeconomic classes. We didn't talk about classism, but that's a thing. And that's one of the qualities of the Queen. She does not put people into classes. She treats everyone exactly the same. And so people can sign up and contact me individually. My assistant will send them the information, and then they receive the classes. They watch the videos at their own speed. So you take it. Some women take a year to go through it. It's intense. It's a paradigm shifter for most women. Most women say, "Oh my gosh, I never knew I was even allowed to think about having these powers."
Wow.
So women can contact us, Ava at museumofwoman.us, and we'll get them all fixed up.
Okay. And do you still offer the Zoom meetings for your goddess temple?
Yes. And this year we're doing the holy days. And so it's about every 6 weeks. And we go through the year. Each holy day has its own qualities and intention and purpose. And we learn what we learn. We go through a brief, very satisfying and simple ritual. We talk about a particular goddess that is associated with that holy day and learn about her and her stories, her mythology, her lore. And we have a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun. That's what we'll be doing. If women want to know about that, it's free. And if you want to be on the list, then just email us and we'll put you on the list. You can join by Zoom wherever you are. We have women from all over the world who attend those. So it'll be fun this year.
Great. So they just have to email Ava at museumofwoman.us.
Right. And it's woman, M-A-N, not as in the archetype, not women. A lot of people get that wrong. So it's woman, M-A-N, yeah, .us.
Okay. Awesome. And I look forward to visiting the Museum of Woman when that
when we reopen, hold a good thought for us in reopening. We're looking for just exactly the right space. I don't know where it will be. It might not even be in California. I don't know, but we're looking, and we will find a space, and we will have a huge grand opening and invite everyone from all over to bless the space. So we're looking forward to that.
Well, that'd be wonderful. And it was so great speaking with you. I could talk to you all day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
It's been wonderful to talk with you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. It's been a complete delight and a joy.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this extended interview with Ava Park. Please visit museumofwoman.us for more information regarding the Queen Teachings with Ava and the Museum of Woman. You may contact her at ava@museumofwoman.us. Visit goddesstempleoc.org to learn more about the Goddess Temple and the free Zoom meetings. Please like, share, and subscribe for more radical feminist content. Check out womensliberationradionews.com for our monthly podcast, interviews, and articles. If you enjoy this volunteer-based project, please consider donating on our website. Stay strong in the struggle, sisters.